Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the LSE Future of Pakistan Conference 2024. I am your president, Ahmed Zakana, and I'll also be serving as the student presiding officer of the conference. Now I'd like to hand it over to our academic chair, Peter Trbawitz, who is the director of the US Center at LSE, and he's someone who genuinely cares about student welfare, and we're really glad to have him to make this conference happen. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you, Zarek. That's great. So good morning, everyone. On behalf of LSE, it's really my pleasure to welcome everyone to today's conference on the future of Pakistan and this opening session entitled Dilemmas of Pakistan's Democracy, Accountability, or Reconciliation. This morning's panel is being moderated by Dr. Farzana Sheikh. Dr. Sheikh is an associate fellow of the Asia Pacific program at Chatham House. She's the author of Making Sense of Pakistan. She's written widely on Pakistan's domestic and foreign policies. We're very fortunate to have her here this morning to lead the discussion. I'm going to turn things over to Farzana to introduce today's this morning's distinguished speakers. But before I do, as academic chair of this event at the LSE, I have two important responsibilities. The first is to remind you to silence your cell phone if you haven't already done that. So please make sure that you do that. But the second and most important is to remind everyone that that at LSE, freedom of expression underpins really everything we do, from the classroom to research to conducting public events like this one at LSE. So with that gentle reminder, I'll be in the audience with you, but with that gentle reminder, let me turn it over to Farzana.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Can you hear me, or do you need my... I guess it's working, right, the mics?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you all for being here, and it's a great pleasure to be back again as part of the Future of Pakistan conference. This is going to be, I think, my third or fourth time. I can't seem to remember. And of course, thank you to its president, the current president Zarek, but of course its past president. Mustafa Haraj and all the others, and I've always been so warmly welcomed. I think that's one reason why I always agree to give up my Saturdays, because it's such a treat to be received as I have been over the years. Well, as you know, we have today what I hope will be an informed discussion on a very difficult and complex subject, which relates to the dilemmas of Pakistan's democracy. And here to join me deconstruct the issue, I have with me two distinguished panelists. To my immediate left, Mr. Mohammad Zubair, who some of you will certainly know. He was most recently governor of Sindh from 2017 to 2018. He is a member of the Pakistan Muslim League faction led by former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. Mohammad Zubair himself, though, started out as a part of IBM's team. He served IBM, if I'm not mistaken, for 26 years before he joined politics and Sharif's party in 2012. In 2013, he was inducted as a member of Sharif's cabinet in charge of the Board of Investment and Privatization, and then, as I said, went on to assume the governorship of Sindh. He has also held the position, which he no longer does now, of having been a spokesman for Mr. Nawaz Sharif and Maryam Sharif. So he's going to be telling us, or giving us, as it were, a first-hand view from the ground of how he sees the fortunes of a party which appear to be on the rise. It's common nowadays to hear of former Prime Minister Sharif as Pakistan's comeback kid. We'll want Mr. Zubair to give us a sense of just how well-founded that claim is. On the far left, there is Raza Rumi, and really he needs no introduction. A high-profile figure, of course, editor of the Friday Times, arguably one of Pakistan's most liberal broadsheets. He's also editor-in-chief of the online platform Naya Daur. But along with his illustrious journalistic career, Raza has also been closely involved in channeling his ideas through the academy. At the moment, he holds the post of distinguished lecturer in public policy at Hunter College with the City University in New York. So it gives me great pleasure then to welcome both my panelists. Now, today, as we know, we are here to talk about the run-up to Pakistan's elections, scheduled for the 8th of February, and we have been assured now repeatedly over the last couple of days that, come what may, these elections will not be delayed or postponed. So we're all hoping that they will still go ahead. What's up for grabs? Well, the election of a new National Assembly with 342 seats, roughly 272 of those will be directly elected. We have 60 reserved seats for women and 10 reserved seats for minorities. At play, there will be 3 main and many lesser parties, and I hope one or both of you will allude to some of those lesser parties and what they might be able to contribute to Pakistan's democratic landscape. So, as I said, there will be 3 main parties, but only 2. The Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, led by former Prime Minister Sharif, and the Pakistan People's Party under the joint chairmanship of Asif Ali Zardari and his son Bilawal Zardari Bhutto, may be said to be in with a chance of forming the next government. For as we well know, the other convincing frontrunner, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, led by former Prime Minister Imran Khan, has been barred, if not effectively banned, from campaigning freely. So what I want to do, having set that scene in very sort of simple terms, is really to draw attention to the 3 main issues which I think are likely to dominate today's discussion. Namely, the status of the main stakeholder in any democracy, the people. And in this case, the people of Pakistan. Because I think the first thing to say here is that there is really little doubt that in the absence of the proverbial level playing field, we have had serious questions raised about the credibility of the forthcoming polls next week, and serious concerns as well about mass disenfranchisement. Because what we have here really, as I said a moment ago, is the constraints and the bars placed on a party that, by all accounts, is still regarded to be the most popular party in Pakistan. That remains to be tested, but so far that is what the polls indicate. So really, I mean, I think, you know, from that point, one of the things I hope we'll be able to talk about a little more today is this related, but by no means secondary issue of the role and responsibility of the PTI, widely regarded, as I said, as Pakistan's most popular party, the role of the PTI, and especially of its leader Imran Khan, in contributing to this crisis of mass disenfranchisement. I mean, there are conflicting views about this. For example, there is a view that claims that the PTI has genuinely tried to mobilize and educate its base and its supporters on the questionable role of Pakistan's military establishment in seeking to direct the course of Pakistan's national politics. So that's one view, Imran Khan as the leader of some kind of pro-democracy movement, which would have the military, which would push back on the military's intervention in politics. But there is also, of course, the other point of view, and those really concern the issue of whether or not the PTI, which many of you will recall was removed through a parliamentary vote of no confidence in 2022, unleashed a protest movement by galvanizing its cult of personality, and in doing so incited its base to act against state institutions, for which, of course, it has paid a very heavy price, as we all know, as a slew of court cases and judgments against the party and its leaders, effectively, as I said, barring it from campaigning freely in these elections. So, in this very polarized political landscape, the second question that I would like to have our panelists address is really the question of the likelihood of any kind of political settlement involving the three main parties. Others, of course, as well, but at the moment we're talking about three main parties, because what many believe is that Pakistan at the present time is in a state of such acute crisis that unless there is political will for a serious national reconciliation between the three main parties, there is very little chance of Pakistan being able to extricate itself from this crisis, or these polycrises, as some have described it. And I think it is unhelpful in that regard for the caretaker Prime Minister, Kakar, to have stepped forward some days ago to say that Pakistan's democracy does not need the PTI. I mean, in the current context, I would see that as being entirely unhelpful and bodes ill for any kind of serious move towards political reconciliation. So, having said that, the question is the PTI is it up to sign up to some kind of a so-called deal towards political reconciliation? Because the PTI's own record in office was unfortunate when it comes to trying to heal divisions. The PTI, I think, for the most part, cruised on a divisive rhetoric. Most of us were dismayed by the former Prime Minister choosing on repeated occasions to describe his political opponents as thieves and crooks in Parliament, ruling out any possibility of working with the opposition to resolve some of Pakistan's serious problems. But now that the party has faced what some would describe as the wrath of the state, is it up for a deal? Has it learned a lesson? Much as some would say, has Sharif now learnt his lesson? Because he too, of course, once faced the same constraints as those being faced by Imran Khan today. So, what have Pakistan's politicians learned from these terrible events? Are they ready for reconciliation? And if so, what kind of reconciliation? And that's where I would like my panelists to shed some light. And finally, really, returning to the first point about the credibility of these polls. I mean, we are now reading day in and day out about so-called pre-poll rigging, election engineering, mainly involving Pakistan's military and the intelligence services. Now, apart from the fact that pre-poll rigging would be seen as extremely disturbing if established, it does actually raise serious questions also about the possibility of an uncomfortably low turnout, which would immediately raise questions about the representative credentials of a new government. Again, leaving any new government with a huge problem, because if we agree that one of Pakistan's main problems is the economic crisis, the next government is going to have to take some really hard decisions to resolve the economic crisis. And without some kind of legitimacy and solid representative credentials, it may find the challenge facing Pakistan's economy quite simply insurmountable. So that's something to be borne in mind. I think I will just like to end by referring to something I read a couple of days ago, and something that I would like all of you to think about in the light of current events. Is Pakistan doomed or not to remain in a state of cyclical dystopia when it comes to its politics? Another meaningless election, another debilitated government, another divided house, and round we go. How do we break this vicious cycle? It's a tough job, for my panelists here. So what I want to do is I'm going to ask each of them in turn to sort of spell out their own thoughts. It's just gone midday, and I've been told that we can be here until 11:15. But you, the audience, will have the lion's share of time in terms of questions to put to my panelists about some of the issues that I've raised and, of course, their own thoughts on the matter. So I was wondering, Zubair, if you might start by giving us your thoughts on the current political predicament faced by Pakistan.
Assalamu alaikum ji. Thank you very much for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be at LSE. It's an honor, in fact. And when I got a call from Raza Rumi, and within half an hour I decided, although many people in the country still send me messages, what are you doing in London with the elections set for February 8th, which for many sort of my PTI friends say, oh, fine, since the election results are already known, so whether you are in London or New York in Pakistan doesn't make any difference. Yes, Pakistan is in a serious crisis on all fronts, political, legal, constitutional, and economic, as you mentioned. Whether February 8th elections will usher in an era of stability from all these standpoints. I forgot to mention foreign policy, obviously. That's a major challenge as well. February 8th elections already are suspect in the sense that I think, like you said, Pakistan is divided like anything. Polarized is the right word, rather. There has always been polarization in Pakistan, but the kind that we see today, where political rivals are not treated as political rivals, but enemy status is given to the political rivals, which is, and just bear with me, I mean, I will be very fair at the end of the day. You will see that I will be fair with whether it's PTI or whether it's, so I'm not just representing PMLN as such. I have a lot of sympathies with PTI as it stands today, but there is a lot of criticism that the supporters and the leadership of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf must acknowledge. The state of polarization, I think, as I've publicly and within the family faced the brunt, we thought I'm joining politics as a politician with a political party based on their basic fundamentals, like the economic position of the party, pro-liberalization, pro-privatization. They wanted to go as far as possible to promote peace with India, which can lead to regional trade. On the civil-military imbalance, they had a very clear position, and so on. So those were the fundamentals on the basis of which I joined. The post-99 PMLN was very clear in terms of its where it stands as far as the civil-military relations, which are key when it comes to Pakistani politics. The privatization process, the liberalization of the economy, the role of the state in the economy, how much PMLN really stood and clearly stated that it believes that there are only three fundamental things that any government is responsible for. One is the rule of law, ensuring rule of law. Second is to provide good infrastructure, whether you're talking about gas, electricity, road, railway, and so on and so forth. And the third is to ensure very investment-friendly investment policies. And the rest will be taken care by the private sector. So those were the kind of things that would appeal to me, and that is why I joined. But when I joined, I suddenly felt from my very close friends, including my family friends, family people, that they regarded, and this was coming from PTI supporters, they regarded me as a bad person who has joined a party who is up to doing bad things. And we can even sell our mothers to, or for money or for power. And that's not the case, because we regard our political opponents as political opponents, and that should be the case. They have a political view of their own, an economic philosophy of their own, a foreign policy philosophy of their own, and they also want to do good for Pakistan, and certainly PTI wanted to do good for Pakistan, and still they want to do good for Pakistan, but in return, we only want that they should also regard us as political opponents. But things have gone from bad to worse, and I will acknowledge, the first person probably to acknowledge here, that when we were facing the brutality when in opposition between 2018 and 2022, some of our colleagues, and many, in fact, not some, many, in return now have started treating PTI as and have given them an enemy status, exactly the way PTI people were treating PMLN. Now PMLN people they think that this is their birthright now, because PTI guys are bad guys. They do bad things. They attack military installations, state institutions, and so on and so forth. And they do all bad things, and they have no right to even be called a political party, which is unfortunate as far as I am concerned. And you mentioned Mr. Kakar's statement, and I think I'm the first one to say it. PTI, how can you say PTI has, it's exactly, it reminds me of General Musharraf. When he came into power, and for many years, he was calling the two mainstream parties as having no role in the future of Pakistan, the Pakistan Muslim League, Nawaz, and Pakistan People's Party. And there were only two major political parties at that time, and General Musharraf was consistently calling them that they have no role in the future of Pakistan. The Sharifs and Zardaris are done, and that is it. And now, for the caretaker Prime Minister to call PTI as having no role as a political party in Pakistan is extremely unfortunate. Because like you mentioned in the beginning, the most important stakeholder in any country are the people. And if the people of Pakistan have a lot of support for Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, that's it. That's the way it is. Now I can challenge anyone whether they should support PTI or not for whatever reason, but I can't deny their existence. I can't deny the fact that they are a leading political party and they deserve to be treated as one, and especially in the context of February 8th elections, and I'll be the first one to acknowledge here that it is unfair because in parliamentary history anywhere in the world, Pakistan stands out as the only one which had in 1985 a partyless elections. The reason for partyless elections in 1985 was because General Zia feared that People's Party would return to power, and he didn't want that over my dead body, as he repeatedly said. So he was forced by the international community to hold elections, and he held elections, but they were partyless elections. But now we are going to create another history in Pakistan, which is elections taking place, which is part party-based and part partyless. I mean, it's an uneven context, and you mentioned 70-odd seats that will go to the minorities and to the women reserved seats. So even if those PTI candidates, independent candidates backed by PTI, win the largest number of seats, they will have zero representation out of those 70 seats. So you can imagine, I mean, many years from now, everyone will be criticizing. So I think the good thing is to understand now the implications of such an elections. And why I say any country needs free, fair, and transparent elections, and more so for Pakistan today, as it faces the kind of extreme economic challenges, foreign policy challenges, governance challenges. Some kind of some kind of a healing process is needed to bring those segments of the population which are obviously supportive of Mr. Imran Khan, but are on the other side. And you can't deal with them. There are only two ways to deal with them. One is through intimidation, filing cases, putting them behind bars, and so on and so forth, scaring them to life. And the other option is to somehow create that level of understanding where they can start to come back and participate in the political process, which is their due right. Whether Pakistan will come out of the economic challenges post-February 8 elections, in an election which is obviously going to be called unjust by most independent analysts, and because of the fragmentation in the society, I think achieving economic success will be miraculous, if not impossible. obviously things will start to look better, that much I can say, because any party which comes into power for a 5-year mandate will go with an IMF program, which will obviously put Pakistan under a strong reform agenda. And Pakistan will have no option but to go to another IMF program, which, by the way, will be another world record that Pakistan would be creating, a 24th IMF program, because each time the new government comes, it's facing balance of payment crisis, and it has no option but to go back to IMF. So it's a difficult time for Pakistan, and I think then we can take the questions.
I should just say that your reference to the next government coming in with a 5-year mandate made me smile, because of course no Prime Minister has ever completed a 5-year mandate in Pakistan. So we await that historic moment. Raza.
I'll just like to make a comment here before. Sorry, Raza. Because when Mr. Imran Khan came, and obviously I had many friends, including her own brother in the PTI, and I was warning them that don't forget history. The 4th year is bad. And sure enough, and they were telling, no, this time it won't happen. But it did happen.
Thank you so much, Farzana, and thanks to the students here at the LSE. It's my alma mater, and really a matter of pleasure and honor, as you said, to be here. And Farzana, after your very eloquent introduction, I don't know what else to add, really, because,
you have plenty
because you
to add,
framed
Raza.
everything so well.
Yeah.
So I think I'll just take a few, I'll pick up some cues from what you said about the credibility of elections. I think that is something which is of great concern, because these elections, as has been established by now, are at best can be called managed. Whether how far the engineering has taken place, and there's still a week left, and further engineering is on the cards, and most stark example of that pre-poll engineering is Imran Khan's repeated convictions. Even just now, I think a few hours ago, he was convicted in the 3rd case, and for a very flimsy and a spurious charge of having entered into a contract of marriage where there's not even a consensus within the Muslims about what is to be done. So obviously Imran Khan is facing a very major attempt by the Pakistani state, which includes, of course, the military establishment, but may I also add other institutions like the Election Commission of Pakistan and others who are now making a concerted effort to exclude his party and him from the emerging political landscape. Now we know that this is not a new technique or not a new development. It has been done repeatedly, what you call the cyclical dystopian policies of Pakistani establishment. They did the same with Nawaz Sharif almost 5-6 years ago. And prior to that, it has been happening as a repeated misconduct, I would say, by the state to have a civilian dispensation which they can control, which they can lead. And this is what leads to the other reality, which is that, Pakistan is a hybrid form of a government. It has been and will be after this election. So, and in fact, it is even, post-February, government would be what one would term as hybrid plus, because by the time a new prime minister takes office, the military has already acquired some historic powers, including economic policy making through an institution, SIFC, which is ostensibly there to facilitate investment from foreign and friendly countries, but in reality it is calling the shots, whether it's the tax reform, whether it's economic policy, and of course it's not new that this particular role was, even when Imran Khan was the Prime Minister, we know that General Bajwa, the former army chief, was calling the shots as to who would be the finance minister and whether the economy is working or not. But this time it has been formalized and made into a de jure instrument through legislation. And guess who enabled that legislation? It is Pakistan's political parties and the current, both the PMLN and the Pakistan People's Party. Whatever they make claims now or in the election campaign, they cannot really absolve themselves of very willingly ceding that space in the hope and expectation that the military establishment would oust their arch rival from the political arena. That has been the arrangement, or the quote-unquote the deal, which we are seeing now unfolding step by step. And what this leads to is the, you mentioned the cyclical dystopia. I would say it's a cyclical and perennial instability, because the seeds of instability are now laid into the very electoral process, the transfer of power that will take place, because obviously the transfer of power on 9th or 10th or whenever the new government is formed will be based on certain conditions and arrangements whereby the military would be calling the shots in certain domains. For the foreign policy and the security policy, they've already it's within their domain and within their command, but now it's also the economic policy, and that is where the seeds of discord would be present between the new government and the powerful military establishment, unless, as you mentioned the word miracle, some miraculous developments happen in the next few months and the military realizes that they need to give the civilians a chance to deliver. But I don't see any signs, and which obviously then leads to the question whether the new government or the elections would result in addressing some of the deep challenges. And some of them have been alluded, the economic crisis is the most fundamental one. Of course, at the outset, the sort of balance of payments or imbalance of payments. Pakistan has to pay a little more than $75 billion in next 3 years as debt repayments. It basically means $25 to $28 billion a year. Now, garnering that money, of course, they will go to IMF, of course, they will go to the Saudis and the Chinese, the usual formula to overcome this crisis. But more importantly, in the past few years, the number of people who can be classified as poor, according to Pakistan's own economic definitions, has increased tremendously. Unemployment numbers have increased, and we have been undergoing what is known as stagflation, low economic growth rate, and extremely high inflation. It's 30% as we speak. Now, this is the context whether an unstable government, which may or may not have the autonomy to address some of these challenges, to take some policy measures, much required, as you term them as hard decisions. And I would add that they are hard also because they need a consensus. Whether you want to have a privatization program, there's not a consensus within the political class. Whether you want to tax the landlords, whether you want to undertake land reform, $17.5 billion worth of subsidies are given each year to Pakistan's exporters, to large corporate entities, including the military, etc. Will this government be able to even curtail some of those? It's very, very unclear, because they obviously will have to play by the status quo and take the military's line of managing and forwarding the political and economic agenda. So I think that is the kind of a future scenario that is now emerging in the wake of the last days of election campaign. Now, coming to your earlier points made about I think you made a very insightful remark as to the contribution of the former Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Khan, and to the current conflict. Now, there are two levels of that. One is, of course, Mr. Khan definitely contributed to it because he is a different brand of a politician. The old school politics that Zubair Saab's party and other parties follow has some kind of semblance of modicum of accepting the rules of the game, the hybrid rules of the game, okay? So there's a hybrid government, there's a civil military power sharing, the military decides how much of power has to be distributed. Mr. Khan, on the other hand, came with that sort of understanding, but somewhere along the line, and also the fact that his brand of politics is populist, kind of attempted to defy some of those rules. I mean, in the sense on the appointment of the ISI chief, when his conflict with the former army chief started towards the end of 2021. Now, historically, prime ministers have had difference of opinion, but Mr. Khan's sort of streak to think that he can make the system work in his favor or somehow subordinate it was, I think, misplaced, where he overestimated his power, and then from the vote of no confidence in 2022 to the events of May 9th, when military installations were attacked by some of the PTI supporters. Of course, Mr. Khan claims it was a false flag operation. So again, there's a divergence and polarizing view of May 9th. But that May 9th is now a kind of a marker, a landmark sordid event of sorts, which has enabled both the further, empowerment of the military, its entrenchment in national affairs, but also a kind of a quasi-legitimate excuse to undertake a brutal crackdown on Imran Khan and his party. So Imran Khan's person is suffering, as we know, with third conviction today, or fourth actually, and that still hundreds, if not more, of his party activists languish in jail, including women, and there has been no proper trial of the May 9th events, and 104 cases or so are with military tribunals, and even they are not proceeding. So it appears that May 9th is used as a rhetorical instrument to continue the exclusion of PTI and Imran Khan from the political scene, because it kind of addresses the military as an institution where Mr. Khan's support enjoys considerable support. Of course, he claims it's 80 to 90%. I don't know, we don't have any data to support, but we know that Mr. Khan's support base is from the same classes that constitute and that get recruited within the army, within the bureaucracy, within the mainstream media, and the growing sort of, Pakistani middle class, which has increased in both size and influence in the last 2 decades. And this is why Imran Khan phenomena is very intriguing, but also a reality that cannot be. So at the moment, perhaps the military and its current partners, the PMLN and the PPP, think that they can use these instruments to, undercut or undermine Imran Khan's popular appeal. I think they're also overestimating or underestimating Imran's popular appeal. And like any other populist movement or populist, and we know that we live in the age of populist strongmen, whether it's Trump in the US or Narendra Modi in India or Erdogan in Turkey. So the populists, there's some common features. There's, of course, economic discontent and a sense of distrust in the system, quote unquote, the way governance is laid out, exercised. And that particular discontent is something that Imran Khan highlights and promises to change. And then we have, the other dimension of populism, which is the external threat or the external interference, which is, and that is why the anti-American card that Imran Khan played garnered so much popular appeal. So I know some of us do, laugh at the Cypher case, saying, well, where's the real evidence? But the reality is that a large number within his support base actually believe that there was a US conspiracy to dislodge him. And it feeds into the historical asymmetrical relationship of Pakistan with the US as the superpower, but also the sense of grievance which has been nurtured over decades among Pakistani people, that the US has has played a rough hand with Pakistan. Now, true or false, or that is something open to the jury. And the third important element that Imran Khan's popular support entails is, of course, the kind of his conservative religious rhetoric. Now, that is also something that the Pakistani state has very carefully, deliberately nurtured over the last 4 decades. And you, of all people, Farzana, know that very well, that it's a foundational issue, but it has been, since the 1980s, it has become the state policy, its laws, its attitude, its politics. So the famous or infamous Islami touch, quote unquote, has been so effectively played out that Imran Khan's appeal and growth in his support has actually crowded out the traditional support for religious parties. The JUI is an orphaned party in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Its support base has declined. The Jamaat-e-Islami's overall support, which used to be a very important player in, at least in the urban conservative middle class constituencies, has also evaporated because Imran Khan's PTI has also absorbed some of that rhetoric. So it's a very popular and a populist formula, which means that he cannot be eliminated from the political scene by using all these instruments. It is a political issue. Now, final point, I know I've taken a lot of time. You said what is to be done and how do we break free of that? And of course, you laid down the way forward. But so we have a very concrete example in our recent history, the 2006 Charter of Democracy, signed by 2 major and a few minor parties. And that laid out a workable formula. And of course, it was violated by both the players, but it did lead to some fundamental changes like the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, which is 101 clauses of the Pakistani Constitution were amended by these very civilians in 2010. Devolution of powers and a historical resolution of sorts of the federal imbalance, whereby a revised National Finance Commission formula now transfers most of the resources to the provinces. But the 18th Amendment was an unfinished project because a very vital component of that was the transfer of power from the provinces to the local governments. So that has not yet taken place. That is something that the parties are now have been promising, but let's see what happens to that. So there is a way forward. Now, the unfortunate part is that from 2008 to 2014 or 15, roughly, there was some opening. There was an expansion of civilian space in the post-Musharraf Pakistan. The military was at the back foot, while it still, had the most power and say in public affairs. The civilians did try and appropriate through the 18th Amendment and NFC. And remember, 18th Amendment is still a thorn in the military establishment's imagination because it says that it weakens the center, deprives resources that they think should be with the central government because of the centralization imperative and history in Pakistan. So going back to that, I think there are openings, and I think that is but after going back to the earlier point, so after the 18th Amendment, I think it was a deliberate policy by the military establishment to gradually encroach or reappropriate the space they may have lost, both in perception, constitutionally and politically. And we saw from the 2014 sit-in its patronage by the then ISI chief and the subsequent policies of the ISI chiefs leading to the another rigged election of 2018 to the current managed and rigged, I would say, election of 2024. They have now returned on the driving wheel, and it is now up to the politicians, especially those who assume power. Now, whether Nawaz Sharif, who is perhaps this will be most likely his last attempt if he becomes the Prime Minister. Would he have that sort of a vision to leave a legacy and stay true to at least some of his former rhetoric on civilian supremacy, democracy and constitutionalism? Or would he be just another hybrid player assisting the military govern the country? Whether the Pakistan People's Party would be able to, if they're in a coalition, weigh upon Nawaz Sharif, because he is the senior most politician. He is the future Prime Minister, whether he would take the initiative and perhaps return, because we know that the Charter of Democracy was the initiative of late Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto, who initiated that particular conversation for years when she and Nawaz Sharif were in exile, and found, and made peace with her worst enemy, who had slandered her, jailed her husband, did all sorts of things. And most critically, whether Mr. Khan, who sits in jail and perhaps for a few more months or maybe another year, whether he will learn from his own experiences, from the mistakes that he may have made of the divisive, polarizing brand of politics, and finding a way forward to come to a new political compact are open questions. But that is perhaps the only way forward that I see, because there is the chance of an outside upheaval like May 9th gaining traction and pushing the military back to the barracks has failed. Obviously, it could not succeed. The other thing that we know from political science, is the fact that if there's an external intervention or there is an external pressure, the military may take a backseat. And we know that despite PTI's repeated requests to the Americans, to the Brits, to the European Union, no major government in the Western capitals has uttered a word in sympathy of Imran Khan, or even condemning because they see the Pakistan army as their partner, right? So it is now up to the Pakistani people, and I would say the Pakistani intelligentsia, which also is neatly and brutally divided along the political lines, So if what I'm saying now about Imran Khan, I would be dubbed as a Imran supporter, because I'm saying that he is being persecuted. And if I were to say Nawaz Sharif was persecuted in 2018, I would be dubbed as a PMLN supporter, and I've been dubbed as both. But the question here is that, this is the problem we face. It is so deeply polarized. The state institutions, we know Supreme Court judges have shown partisanship in the last 1 to 2 years. One set of judges being sympathetic to Imran Khan, the other set being hostile to him. We know that the generals, we of course know anecdotally and through conduct, the generals are divided. We know that the civil service itself is also polarized along these political lines. So it's very much reminiscent of not just, and Pakistan is not alone. And I want to make this point to place Pakistan's current predicament in the larger global and regional, dynamics. So what is happening in Bangladesh at the moment, the intense polarization and managed election. What is happening in India, the polarization within the court, within the bureaucracy, within the intelligentsia and other parts. So I'll stop here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that very, very rich discussion, Raza. It was, it was thought-provoking, and of course, as usual, you touched on several key issues. And my takeaway really from what you've said is that each time when you look back on Pakistan's history, we find that the military rises phoenix-like from setbacks which many assume will permanently neuter the organization. And every time it has been proved wrong. But I think more important than that is the way in which Pakistan's political classes and its political parties have enabled the military to emerge and rise phoenix-like, the way in which the parties have been complicit in allowing the military to regain the ground that it might have lost, and political parties do so, of course, by enabling this vice-like grip by remembering fair play and democratic norms only when they're out of power, and then they look to the military to help them regain their own ground. And so, as I said, round and round we go. But of course, there's plenty to say, plenty for all of you to get your teeth into what Raza has just said, and what Zubair Saab said earlier on. So I'm going to open the floor. As we were reminded earlier on by Peter, the aim is to have an informed discussion predicated on freedom of expression, and I hope you will respect that. When you do ask your questions, please identify yourself. No statements, a question. I can be a tough judge.
Yes, we know that.
Okay. And I should also say that I'm going to take woman, man, this side, that side. So
Okay. So you have
let's have a couple of. Well, let me start with a woman. Any women? Aisha.
Oh.
On the right, and then we'll move to the left side.
Thank you, Aisha Siddiqa here. Excellent presentations, and I kept thinking how to move forward. Very quick question. One is, if there is going to be instability and people are unsatisfied with the election results, what do you envision? What instability, what shape will it take? And the second question is, going to the way forward, Charter of Democracy. Now, Charter of Democracy happened when
2006.
2006, when both parties, PPP and PMLN, realized that they need to kind of set the differences apart and come together. Now, here we have a character, which is Imran Khan, whose main his political career was, it was charted because he was brought in as a third force to counter these two, but also because he believes that his main agenda is to counter the two forces. I mean, he genuinely believes in that as well. I mean, they're dishonest, whatever his excuses. Now, how then do you get this one versus two to talk? And, what form will it take? And leading from that is that none of the parties, PTI, PML, and PPP, have actually looked at giving institutional pushback to the military. Do you see that happening now?
Can I answer?
Please.
I think it's very relevant. You make a very strong point, and that is where Raza, I wanted to disagree with you that the way forward. It's easy said than done. For me, it's a non-starter. And the reason is, in 2006, the two leaders, Benazir Bhutto and Mr. Nawaz Sharif, were both in exile, sent by Musharraf. And like I said earlier, he had declared that these two parties, or these two leaders at least, have no role in Pakistan's future. So it was very natural for them to come together and realize that the politics of 1990s, which they pursued, is not sustainable. Given an opportunity, they have to back each other and not look towards the militaries, which was the formula in the 90s or even earlier. Unfortunately, here now there are three major players: the Pakistan People's Party, the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, and Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. And knowing all three somehow, I know obviously Mr. Nawaz Sharif more than the others, but I know Mr. Imran Khan as well, and everyone knows through his way of politics and so on. I mean, here is a person, Mr. Imran Khan, who was not just doing different type of politics, he was doing the kind of things which is not acceptable in our society. And a very simple example of that is that he would not even shake hands with his political opponents. I was his friend till 2010, a friend, okay? And he stopped shaking hands with me because when I joined Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, he thought I am enemy and you don't shake hands with enemy. And in fact, I reminded that you are advocating good relations with India, where you will obviously have to shake hands with Mr. Narendra Modi or whoever is the Prime Minister and others. And you refuse to shake hands with, in the front benches of the parliament where Mr. Shehbaz Sharif and the other leadership of the opposition was sitting. So my take on that is one, just when the good times are returning for Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, for example, I see little space that they will initiate this kind of an objective. On the other hand, Imran Khan, we still don't know what is happening in the jail, whether any authorities are talking to him, as has been the case in the past, that once you put the person behind bars, it is all political, and then you negotiate some kind of a deal, at least trying to make him run away from the country to solve some of the problems within the country. That has never worked in the past. But for me, it is a non-starter. I just wanted to clarify one point that Raza mentioned, because it's important that Imran Khan was different from the other political leaders in dealing with the army. And whereas Mr. Nawaz Sharif would make some compromises, Imran Khan was not ready. I think that's quite different. Imran Khan had outsourced.
He did make compromises.
He literally outsourced the politics to GHQ. I mean, who were negotiating with the opposition. There was a colonel who used to sit in the parliament, sitting with the speaker to even form the agenda. So that much of outsourcing he had done. Had he done that outsourcing and through, say, Mr. Jahangir Tareen, it would have been different. And the history of Mr. Nawaz Sharif is very different. He was ousted from power 3 times, not once, 3 times. And each time it was a confrontation with the army. The third time I'm a witness, between 2013 and 2018, within a year of assuming power in 2014, there was a dharna. And that dharna had the backing of the journals then. And everyone agrees to that. And there was this confrontation. And the first demand that they had put was that why not Mr. Nawaz Sharif resigns and allows Mr. Shehbaz Sharif while the party remains in power, and we refused. The second time it came was in 2016 when Rahil Sharif wanted an extension. The fight began because he wanted an extension.
So what is the way forward? I mean, just to tie into Aisha's point and, you know, the earlier, I mean, how do you see it, short of a reconciliation, modeled or not along the lines of the 2006 Charter of Democracy? I mean, where, you know, what is the way forward?
I think the only way forward for Pakistan is, it has to come through pressure groups from independent people.
So the political parties, as we know,
have to be subjected to adhere to the constitution, whether it is dealing with their political opponents, or respecting the independence of the judiciary, or respecting the independence of the media. And that phase, if that process starts, it automatically leads to some kind of a political space for everyone to participate and reach out to the people of Pakistan.
So in other words, you're saying the way forward is respect for the constitution.
Absolutely.
Okay. Raza, very quick response to.
Yeah, so I think both of you have already covered that. I think very difficult questions that you've raised, Dr. Aisha. The thing is that the future is not stable. Of course, I mean, you know, that's very clear that these elections are not going to lead to political stability in the medium to long term. And maybe in short term, for the next one year or so, you know, there's a euphoria of a new government, a new, you know, time is given on the honeymoon period. But once that starts, the economic crisis is so intense that, you know, it cannot be handled by a single party. It requires across the political divide consensus, and of course the nod by the military to undertake whatever policy you have to. And then the system is played out in such a, or is managed in a way that the seeds of instability are carefully planted as and when required. They are watered and nurtured. So assume that the next Prime Minister is Nawaz Sharif or his brother. The moment they have a falling out with the army or a difference on policy, the issue of the rigged nature of 2024 election, quote unquote, would be amplified. Mr. Imran Khan will be given some relief and released from jail, and there goes another cycle. I mean, that's what I foresee. I may be wrong, but I'm only basing it on a very close reading of our history.
Yes, yes. So, in other words, you too remain quite pessimistic,
Yes,
at least, for the short to medium term,
Short
about
term.
whether or not these forthcoming elections will spell stability. Of course, they are a necessary condition for the legitimacy of any new government, but they are by no means a sufficient condition
Yes.
for the kind of stability that we are looking for. A question at this end, the gentleman here in the front.
Yeah.
Please identify yourself.
Yeah, I'm Naeem Cooker, and my question is that
Sorry, I didn't get the name.
my name is Naeem Cooker. Having looking at the history of Pakistan, the PPP, Muslim League, and now the PTI.
Can you speak a bit louder? I mean, keep the mic close to
Yeah.
you.
My question, my query is that Pakistan People's Party and the Muslim League and the PTI now, they are all victims of the military regimes. Why can't they join hand? Why can't they be on the same page?
Can I answer in very short one sentence?
Sure.
This question we asked the PTI guys in 2018 when Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz was undone, that can we get together to fight the military's influence in politics? And he said there's no military influence in politics. There never has been any. It was only at the time of vote of no confidence in 2022, around February or March, that those large, educated, middle-class urbanites, Pakistanis, realized that yes, military has not only been influential in politics, they have been messing up since the 60s. And there was this sudden realization. So unfortunately, your point is absolutely right. That's the only way forward. But will Mr. Nawaz Sharif take this initiative? I think the answer is no.
Raza, very
Yeah,
quick
very
response
quickly.
before
I think
just-
I already said that that's the only way forward for fixing Pakistan's broken political system. But I do feel that, events will move in that direction. We have seen in our history over the years, over the decades, that, the political foes do come on the same page and on the negotiating table once the conditions change. And the conditions at the moment favorable for PMLN, I think, will not remain favorable in the coming years. Yes, there will be an intervening good 1 to 2 year period, but we know how this vicious cycle works, and that may be the time when. And of course, Imran Khan has to change his attitude. Even now, he has given feelers that he will talk to his opponents, but he primarily wants to talk to the army. He says, I'm willing to have a dialogue. They are not willing to talk to me.
Can I just come in very briefly on that? Because we haven't actually mentioned any of the party manifestos. And one of the things that has raised eyebrows with regard to the PTI's party manifesto is its proposals for constitutional change.
Yes.
And one of the things that is in this manifesto is for a directly elected prime minister who presumably will not be responsible to Parliament with its seedy politics and its seedy political parties, but will be responsible to the people with a capital P. Yeah. And really, it's an attempt, I think most analysts would agree, to sort of introduce a kind of presidential system,
Yes.
Through the back door
Yeah.
of a parliamentary democracy. And that, of course, does not bode well, either for the kind of change that we are looking for, that Aisha alluded to, that we're all concerned about, political parties learning how to work together with civilian supremacy and parliament at the center. Questions from this end?
That guy has been raising hand on the left.
He was the first one to raise the hand.
Oh, sorry.
Anyways.
Hi. My name is Faraz. I'm from Hyderabad, Sindh. My question is primarily for you, Raza. You mentioned the 18th Amendment. I'm a huge supporter of it. However, I think seeing the comments that I've seen from the previous army chief, what do you see the fate of that amendment? Do you see it getting rolled back potentially in the future?
No, I don't think so. I think to roll back constitutional amendments is a very tricky process. First of all, it's a 2/3 majority that you need, so no government on its own can do it. And I think it's in the interest of political parties, because they govern provinces, to have a bigger share for their provincial government, but which is also allows them to give patronage to their constituents. So there's an inbuilt vested interest.
Take more
Is that-
I think
Any response,
there are
sir?
not total unanimity on undoing 18th Amendment. No one is calling, not even the army chief. There are certain provisions where the subjects, and it's also about the distribution of resources, which is what was decided in the 7th NFC, that there is a belief that larger chunks of money go to the provinces, and the center is left only to borrow and pay the interest cost and so on and so forth. So there is this question whether the provinces should take over some burden of the resources to raise themselves, tax themselves, rather than leaving entirely up to the central government to do it. So those kind of things. Other than that, I think 18th Amendment was primarily undoing the 17th Amendment of Musharraf, who had brought in those changes. So 90% were undoing Musharraf's amendments in the constitution, which obviously no political leader would start to implement again.
And much, of course, to the military's chagrin. I mean, we've seen the military repeatedly try, in some way, to weaken and water down the 18th Amendment, which Raza, of course, you said tried to sort of, break.
It was General Bajwa, when he took over, announced it expressly as part of Bajwa doctrine to undo the 18th Amendment.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that we ought to have actually spoken about is the way in which the military itself does not favor a strong government. I mean, the military has always preferred to have rather fragile civilian governments, because, of course, it prefers to retain the role of arbiter to itself, so that, a party that will come in with a thumping majority is not something that the military would necessarily encourage. And do remember that even in 2018, when Imran Khan, very much nurtured and cultivated by the military, was voted into power, his majority was razor thin. And I suspect that, Nawaz Sharif and his party are probably not going to come in with the kind of workable majority that would allow some of these changes we've been talking about to get started. There are significant breaks in the way, and the most significant of those breaks is, of course, the military, which has always wanted to play arbiter between Pakistan's political parties, who have
I
in
think
their own
let the
time
gentleman here,
complicit.
I think with the name Imran, I think he deserves to ask questions.
Bilkul.
Assalamu alaikum. My first question is for Zubair Saab. In the foreseeable future, do you see defectors, people that have...
Do you see the factors?
as in people that have, let's just say people that are no longer with PTI.
Could you speak up a little bit, please?
People that are no longer with PTI, people that have taken a step back from PTI. Do you see them forming a political party that is willing to work collaboratively with PML, Noon and PPP in the form of a coalition, possibly in the foreseeable future? So that's my first question for you, Zubair Saab. And for Raza Saab, my question for you is that you mentioned that the US, you could say the global north, has been less interested in, let's say, up, let's say, holding the
Critiquing
military.
the human rights violations.
Yeah. So, Jan, you mentioned that the military is like a partner for the Global North. So what is the Global North's interest with the military? Like, for instance, why hasn't the Global North been interested in building that sort of partnership with the civilian leaders? And how does it benefit from maintaining relations with the military, essentially preventing democratic consolidation, and the Global North being known for being a channeling body for democracy?
Okay.
Raza?
Okay, very quickly, I think, client states, the relationship of Pakistan's, with the West, especially the US, has been that of a client state since 1950s, when Pakistani state decided to enter into a Cold War partnership with the US. And since then, it has been a military to military, largely a security related relationship. There have been little spots here and there, efforts here and there to build the kind of engagement with the civilian leaders. But remember that, countries like the US and others, they want to get their work done. And particularly and most likely, these are security alliances, whether in Afghanistan, and now, with China rising and Pakistan being in the neighborhood and the issues with Iran and they see the Pakistan army as their partner. And the civilians don't really matter, unfortunately. Let's be very brutal about hard, cold facts. We don't like it. We'd like civilians to craft a foreign policy which is in Pakistan's interest, which tries to reset some of these imbalances and asymmetries. But the brute facts are that is how it is.
Okay, I'll just add one line before answering the other question. It's very easy to deal with one man. If you can get things done from one man, why should you go to the Prime Minister, who will then have to go to the Parliament and the Cabinet and so on and so forth? And the government could be a coalition government with different stakes and so on and so forth. So it's very easy. Reach out to one man and settle your issues. That has been the case since the 60s. With regard to, I think you're asking the wrong person whether PTI will take back those who have left the party. I mean, it is for Mr. Imran Khan, but what I know of Mr. Imran Khan, I mean, in this context, that he has actually declared that he will not accept any of those who buckled under pressure for whatever reason, except for few who he thinks had some legitimate reasons, like some women workers, for example, who left but still continue to support the party publicly.
Let's take one question from the back, the gentleman there.
I'm a journalist from 92 News. Ghulam Sanwan is my name.
From
92 News.
92 News.
Zubair Sahab, my question particularly from you. Do you think Pakistan can move forward when your military leadership thinks when military leadership thinks 18th Amendment is more dangerous than the 6 points of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman? And what do you think is the biggest challenge for the forthcoming government to tackle this situation? Because the army thinks the 18th Amendment is more dangerous than the 6 points of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman.
Okay.
Military by nature prefers a strong center. That's very simple. Whether it was during Ayub Khan's time or any other time in history, because military itself has a central command and all the decisions are coming down and implemented. And it wants to see a strong center. And 18th Amendment is basically in line with the philosophy or the spirit of the 1973 Constitution, where the provinces have the rights and the mandate over most of the subjects. So I fail to see that the word that you use is extremely strong, that it is as bad as the 6 points of Mujibur Rahman. And by the way, after many decades, Pakistanis realized what actually was so wrong about those 6 points. Maybe one or two, but other than that, it was more about provincial autonomy and more space for the majority province, not to forget that. So I think undoing 18th Amendment will be impossible under the circumstances. Definitely PPP is strongly opposed to that. PMLN is not that strongly opposed. It is ready to sit and understand what exactly to the army chief wants in terms of changes in the 18th Amendment, but I don't see a likely change in the 18th Amendment.
In any case, as Raza has pointed out, it's not going to be easy. You do need a two-thirds majority, and that looks very unlikely in the present circumstances. So
this gentleman in the center, Farzana, he's been...
Oh, the
he has a
gentleman
name tag.
here.
Yeah.
Okay, please.
He was the first of the few.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Fase, and my question mostly pertains, a lot has been said about the institution, the military, the establishment, and this whole big organizational clash which is going on, but perhaps this is my positionality maybe as an army brat, in which I think, and if you look at the history, I've read very little history as compared to you guys, but I feel that ultimately when the political crisis like this reaches the peak, it becomes less of an institutional crisis and more of a personal battle. Like it becomes extremely personal. And I can tell you, like the voices inside the military, like I come from a very senior position.
And who are the persons involved? Are you talking about political personalities?
Political person, like in this case, for example, it all started, right now the perception generally is, it's not the army versus the PTI, it's basically Asim Munir versus Imran Khan, or it was Baja versus Imran Khan, or it is the DGISI versus Imran Khan. So do you think that, and this political personality clashes comes to A, political perseverance, political survival, that threat that if he comes back into power, I'm gone, probably. So my question mostly pertains to that. Are we looking at it the wrong way? And B, will Imran Khan will now be looking at if his best bet right now is for this army chief to go and the next one to come, which I don't think is going to be.
That's a very important point. I mean, I myself am on record in saying that one factor that constrains political reconciliation is, particularly at the present moment, is the kind of personal animosity between Imran Khan and the current army chief. So
that's absolutely true, but it has always been the case. You have probably realized it now. It was Nawaz Sharif versus General Pervez Musharraf, Zia versus Bhutto. It has always been, and then once they got rid of Nawaz Sharif in 1999, for example, PMLN was done and PMLQ was created. Okay. They had an issue with People's Party. They created PPP Patriots and undid the PPP. So this has always been, it's one leader. That is why in Pakistani politics you have heard the word -1. And -1 has always referred to, it is not just now for Mr. Imran Khan, it has always been there. Get rid of the top man and everything will be fine. Obviously that's not true, and that should never be the way. The battle becomes so tense or deadly like it was between Bhutto and Zia, where only one could survive. Hopefully it's not as deadly this time.
As that. Raza?
Yeah, I think it was a very important dimension, and I wanted to, in fact, allude to it in my remarks, but there was so much else to say. I think there's certainly a personal dimension, which you have mentioned, but then it is too much of a reductionist perspective. If you take, as in Asim Munir, as one person totally against. Asim Munir is the chief of the army staff. He commands the entire sort of ship of the large military machine. He has his core commanders with him, at least 10 to 11 leaders who are in sync and are on the same page on whatever policy they are undertaking. See, there are institutional issues there as well. We just talked about, our friend here said about the global north being a partner of Pakistan Army. So Mr. Imran Khan's foreign policy, and not that he did any major transformative change, but he did end up annoying some of the key critical partners of Pakistan's military and state, like Saudi Arabia, like China to some degree, and US to some degree. And we know from Donald Lu's comments to our former ambassador, which have in the cipher cable, he's not arguing for regime change, but he's expressing dissatisfaction with the then Prime Minister in very clear terms. So we know that. So that is what undermines military's institutional interest. So I think it is beyond personal, number one. However, Mr. Imran Khan's rhetoric, because his greatest strength is his populist rhetoric and the name calling that he does, which garners him millions of claps, but that's also his biggest disadvantage because it alienates these people. So at the moment, 3 key institutions. We are since talking about the election, Farzana, and I should have mentioned, I did not want to make it into Imran-centric discourse. The Chief Election Commissioner, the Chief Justice of Supreme Court, and the Chief of Army Staff, all 3 powerful actors who are in charge of this election, have been personally angered and targeted by Imran Khan. For right or wrong reasons, I'm not saying that. So, for example, the Chief Election Commissioner, time and again, the party has called for his resignation. They have called his wife names, who's a civil servant. They've called her, it's a targeting, Pakistani men don't like this. Conservative families don't want their wives to be called in jalsas and political rallies. It's a reality of our culture. The Chief Justice of Supreme Court was, for 2 years, hounded under Imran government by the then ISI chief, and Imran Khan played ball. In fact, one of his first statements after being removed from power was that they made a mistake in filing reference against the Chief Justice. And then comes General Asim Munir, who was his DG ISI, who Imran Khan fired, and you are a military brat, quote unquote, and when a military officer is fired before the end of his tenure, it's the end of his career. Right?
I just want to add. He not only fired, but he actually asked General Bajwa to remove him the same evening.
Yeah. Now that's coming from a very well-informed source. But let me Farzana, just one line more. Not only fired him, but then when his time came for appointment, Mr. Imran Khan led a long march against his appointment. This is unprecedented in the history of Pakistan, as messy and troubled it is for a political leader in the opposition to say, I should be the one deciding on the appointment of army chief, and I'm going to lead a public protest against the potential appointment. And then he was going to go to GHQ, but he terminated his long march. Now, add all of this. 3 key persons, 3 aggrieved, hurt, angry players, and versus Imran Khan. Obviously, what is happening now is happening.
So, in other words, another great misfortune of Pakistan's politics is its personalized politics. And that too. We're just coming up to a minute, and there are so many hands going up. It's
just collect
can we just have maybe a set of questions, and then I'll ask the panelists to respond generally. So the gentleman here, and maybe one more, the gentleman
there.
There's
a lady there.
I think. Yeah, the lady must get.
Which one is that? Oh, here, right here. Yes. So so you, the gentleman here, and there. So we'll just have these 3 questions. Please keep them short, because I've been told we must clear out by 1:15.
I'm Myra Sajid, and I wanted to
could you?
Myra Sajid, and I wanted to ask, do you think that Pakistan
keep it close.
Can transition away from the cycle of dynasty politics, and if instead there were like newer third parties that came in place, would this destabilize the establishment and civil relations and give the military an upper hand? Or would these have the potential to strengthen democracy?
So can we see the end of dynastic politics in Pakistan? Next question, I think the gentleman here.
Hi, my name is Sheikh. I'm a lawyer, and I really admire by Zubair. And the question that I wanted to ask you about the economic plan that he's making, if they succeed and they win the elections...
Sorry, you just have to speak up.
If they succeed and win the election, what is the economic plan for the next 5 years?
Okay.
And will they ever compete with the G20 and G7 countries of the world with Dubai, with my friends?
Okay, got it.
And just one more question from the gentleman here, and then...
And can I also take a picture with Zubair?
Yeah, sure.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Qazi Furqan. So my question is, like, as you guys were saying that elections this year would be managed. So I think, when when you just go to your cupboard and you manage to find a shirt, you actually select that shirt to wear. So if that elections are going to be managed, why should Qazi Furqan vote?
Why is it?
Why should Qazi Furqan vote? Which is exactly what the purpose of establishment's interference is, to keep voters like you away from the polling booths.
Yeah, okay, we got the 3 questions. The first question about...
Acha, wo bhi ladka piche.
Chalo.
But hang on. We're just going to try and get some order here. What I want to say is that questions relating to Pakistan's economy, critical and important as they are, perhaps can be left for later, because we're running short of time. Zubair Sahib is going to be on that panel. There's going to be a more focused discussion on the economy. But I do want to raise, have your views very quickly on the whole question of dynastic politics, which of course is seen as the bane of Pakistan's politics, apart from,
First,
all the
it
other...
is not just Pakistan, which has dynastic politics.
We don't want a what about
I'm
want to have
let me answer the way I want to. A reminder also for our friends here in UK. In the United States of America, between 1980 to 2008, the president or the vice president were either a Clinton or a Bush.
But
okay?
let's
and I can
just
go
talk
on
about,
to some of these things.
Let's you're sounding
this is
defensive
the
now.
question.
Let's
and
just talk about Pakistan.
Okay, Pakistan. I do share your concern. The problem is that if you remove, for example, Mr. Nawaz Sharif, I'm not talking about Shehbaz Sharif. I'm talking about Nawaz Sharif. Remove Nawaz Sharif, 80% of the votes will go down. That's the impact. That's what we feel. When Mariam Nawaz was appointed as the chief organizer, and there was this hue and cry, and many people said, why not Shahid Khaqan Abbasi and others? The question, I have been with Mariam Nawaz all through these 3.5 years. And from Karachi to Peshawar to Azad Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan, there's no other leader other than Nawaz Sharif who can match her popularity. So if any other guy who goes, so this is a dilemma, you could say. On principle, yes, you are absolutely right. So the kind of support that Bilawal Bhutto garners from the PPP's voters, any other leader would not be. Raza Rabbani, for example, who's intellectually very strong. Even Asifa in recent days, for example, in the last 1 week, she's come out and she's drawing big crowds just because she's a Bhutto. So the problem is this, and many people actually say that because of this dynastic politics, PPP and PMLN were able to survive. What would happen with PTI, with Imran Khan leaving no one to replace him from within the family?
But of course, many believe that dynastic politics has stunted Pakistan's politics. Raza,
I think it's a long-term process. So look at our neighbor India. It also has the largest party, was dynastic party. Over the years, that has been waning. It happens with repeated elections. A relatively transparent, open political system which enables choice, not like the managed election we do time and again.
Yes, I mean, I think, and again, one of Pakistan's great misfortunes before we just close down, and I'm sorry that I end on a pessimistic note, is that it seems to me that it is a country trapped between dynastic politics and the cult of personality. Yeah. And we're going to find it very, very hard to navigate a way out of this, unless, of course, as Raza says, we have somehow we are able to introduce regular and systematic elections, however flawed and however imperfect these might be. You have to allow the political process to continue without repeated military interventions as you have had in Pakistan through the course of its history. I'd like to end it there, thanking all of you and thanking in particular my 2 distinguished panelists. Please give them a hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. So our special thanks go out to our panelists today, Mr. Zubair Umar, Mr. Raza Rumi, and Dr. Farzana Sheikh for their discussion on our first panel of the 2024 Future of Pakistan Conference. We're grateful to them for providing insights on important topics such as dynastic politics, military intervention, and the role of Imran Khan. Now, we'll be starting our second panel at 2:15 p.m. In the meantime, refreshments will be served outside of the old theatre. We would like to tell everyone who's coming back for the second panel to make sure that you don't bring any food and drink into the thing, and to make sure you have the appropriate wristband. Thank you.